Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to That Triathlon Show, the podcast presented by scientifictriathlon.com. I'm your host, Michael, and this episode is Beginner Tip 36, where we will discuss 7 common strength training mistakes. But first, let's thank our sponsors. Precision Hydration, that you can find on precisionhydration.com, make electrolyte products to keep you hydrated and keep you from cramping. There are 2 main theories on what causes muscle cramps, and the first one is the dehydration/electrolyte theory, that if you lose a lot of sodium through your sweat and you don't replace enough of it, which is common when you sweat a lot and you have a high sweat sodium content, this can cause fluid shifts in the body that trigger cramps. The second theory is the neuromuscular theory, that muscles tend to cramp when they're overworked and fatigued due to electrical misfiring. And both theories have some evidence going for them. Precision Hydration has a big blog on that. So it's quite likely that muscle cramps have multiple causes, including both of these theories, but maybe not even limited to these. Anyway, this means that it's likely that multiple different interventions are needed to try to avoid and relieve different types of cramps. So, on the hydration side of things, you should choose electrolyte supplements that are strong enough to make a difference. Most sports drinks are very light in sodium, containing roughly 200 to 500 milligrams of sodium per liter. That's 32 ounces. But on average, a liter of sweat or 32 ounces of sweat has 950 milligrams of sodium. So if you lose a liter of sweat and you drink a liter of sports drink, you go on a very large net negative sodium, which is why Precision Hydration has sodium concentrations of 1,000 or 1,500 milligrams per liter in their electrolyte supplements. They also have a 500 milligram version, but if you are a heavy sweater in particular, look for 1,000 or 1,000 milligrams in your supplement. And you can try Precision Hydration and get your first box for free with the promo code ThatTriathlonShow, all one word, all caps, on precisionhydration.com. And big thanks to Roka, that is the world's premium triathlon apparel brand. You can find them on roka.com. There you can find wetsuits, tri-suits, buoyancy shorts, swim skins, and sunglasses. And let's talk a little bit about these sunglasses again, because it's something that I haven't talked about as much as the other products in the past. Roka's sunglasses are really next level sunglasses. I didn't believe that I needed performance sunglasses before I tried Roka, but then I realized that, hey, I do need this. They're ultra lightweight. They have patented technology for max retention, so they cannot fall off your face during sport, no matter how you try. Their optics are great, the polarization is great in them, and they also have an advanced performance line that you can have custom fits for and custom design options, so that's really, really neat as well. And whatever you need to shop on Roka, you can get it for 20% off. That's for your entire order using the promo code ThatTriathlonShow, all one word, all caps. Alright, so just like we have been doing the last few weeks in the beginner tips, let's talk about mistakes, and this time relating to strength training. And I have 7 mistakes to cover today. 1, not having a purposeful plan. 2, joining irrelevant classes. 3, poor form and technique. 4, not lifting heavy. 5, insufficient recovery between sets. 6, poor post-workout and daily fueling and nutrition. And 7, not tracking progress. So number 1, not having a purposeful plan. It's a very common mistake, even in your overall training structure with the swim, bike, run component. But I think it's even more so common in strength training. So just ask yourself, if you are a gym goer, when you are in the gym, how often do you decide, only once you're already in the gym, one exercise at a time, what you'll do next? How often do you have no thought as for what weights and rep and set numbers you should be using, as long as you can lift it without breaking your back, of course? And how often do you ignore the timing of your recovery between different sets and do it just on feel, quote unquote, or not recover at all? So we could talk for hours about each of these components. They are foundational pillars of a good progressive strength training program, but instead I'll just refer you to episode 81 on that triathlon show. That's called The Triathlete's Strength Training Formula. I'll link to it in the description. And also my blog post on the topic, which I also linked to, which is called Triathlon Strength Training in 2018, The Definitive Guide. So there you can find out more about these details. But just to encourage you to acknowledge that precisely like in swim, bike and run training, you have to have a plan that include all of these things. The exercises that you'll do, the weights, the sets, the reps, and the recovery between sets. Some other things as well, like whether you do max strength or explosive strength training, would be useful to include, but it's not the main thing really. It doesn't have to be super advanced or fancy, as long as it works and is progressive. That's the main thing. It can be very simple, and in fact, in many cases, a simple plan is the best plan. But the final point about it being progressive is also one thing that I want to emphasize. If you are not getting stronger in the gym, you're sort of wasting your time. Unless, of course, your goals are completely different. That might be a different story. If you go to the gym to work on mobility, then that's, of course, fine. But if you are actually doing some sort of strength training, you want to get stronger, period. All right, so number 2, joining irrelevant classes. 95% of the athletes that I talk to at one point or another mentioned that time is one of their biggest struggles with triathlon training. This is true for me as well, and I bet that even for most professional athletes it is. This, of course, leads to all sorts of conclusions, but especially that in our sports we have to be smart with how we use our time and not waste any precious training time on the kind of training that has little to no benefit for us getting closer to our goals. And with the vast majority of gym classes, I think this falls in the bucket of not optimal use of time and borderline time wasting. In many cases, it is outright time wasting for sure. But take as an example a 1-hour Pilates class. So I'm not saying that Pilates is bad by any means, but it's significantly less effective use of time than to do 20 minutes of functional strength training 6 days a week at home. And yes, you can do 6 days a week times 20 minutes because you need to factor in the transportation to the gym, etc. with that 1-hour Pilates class. So that would be much more beneficial. Also, another thing that would be much more beneficial is if you, for example, go to the gym, you want to go to the gym, then do 15 minutes of warm-up and mobility, then 30 minutes of weightlifting, and then 15 minutes of core training and functional strength training, rather than 60 minutes of Pilates. Another example, yoga. Rather than a 60-minute yoga class, maybe you do 3 times 20 minutes mobility and 3 times 20 minutes functional strength at home, spread out over 6 days. Again, a much bigger return on investment. So you see what I mean here. There's too much time wasting going on, especially with going to these long 1-hour classes. It's not really, you don't get the most out of your input from those sorts of classes. And in many cases, you actually don't need the sort of training stimuli that these classes provide. For yoga and Pilates, for example, I think it's perfectly fine to do them for 20 minutes or so. But then after that, the return on investments gets very low. But in other cases, like body pump and aerobics and the likes, then that's definitely in the realm of no value whatsoever from a triathlon perspective. So in those cases, you would want to completely swap those classes for some purposeful strength and conditioning work to get the most out of your time. But keep in mind, of course, that this is from the perspective of triathlon training, and if your goal is also to have fun with friends and just be generally healthy, then it might make sense to not focus completely on triathlon and do that 1-hour aerobics class. So I'm not saying that that's wrong, but from a triathlon perspective, it is definitely time wasting. Number 3 is poor form and technique. This applies to both functional strength and core training, and as well as weightlifting, but especially when lifting weights, since if you lift with poor form and technique, you are at a serious risk of injury. This is absolutely critical. And with free weights especially, and since that is one of the most effective ways of lifting, you need to make sure that you get your technique right by starting out with low weights, maybe even just body weight or just the bar. For example, in the squat, you need to think about things like the width and the angling of your feet, your posture and posterior chain alignment, how your knees track. There's a lot going on there. And so even if you think that you have good form, you have experience in the gym, it's worth having somebody spot you. So look at your form the next time you go to the gym. Of course, it should be somebody who knows what correct technique really is. And if you're inexperienced with lifting weights, you should make the investment in getting a personal trainer or perhaps your coach, if your coach, triathlon coach that is, knows these things, to help you learn the right technique off the bat the first few times that you go and start a strength training program. This will pay off big time because learning to get the technique right will allow you then to actually make big improvements in your strength, which will lead to triathlon improvements. And also strength and conditioning will then be an injury prevention mechanism for you rather than an injury generation mechanism. Tip number 4, or mistake number 4, not lifting heavy. So I mentioned already that at least one of your goals with strength and conditioning should be to become stronger. And for that, you need a progressive strength training plan. But more specifically than just being progressive, to get the most bang for your buck in terms of strength that translates to improvement in triathlon performance, the research is very clear that you should be lifting high weights, low reps. And this means up to 6 reps at most. If you don't go down this route, you're very likely to stagnate quite quickly and waste a lot of time not getting any stronger anymore. So for more details, definitely see episode 81 and that blog post that I'll link to. But this is something that is quite foreign to many newcomers in the gym. So I do want to emphasize its importance here again in terms of the improvements that translate to actual triathlon performance. But be careful, and you of course need to start easy, start with body weight, start with just the bar, etc. And be careful when you first get into lifting heavy weights. That would be one of those situations when getting that PT, the personal trainer, to come back and spot you for a follow-up lesson would be very much recommended from my perspective. When you first graduate from learning the technique with light and moderate weights to using heavy weights. One more thing, by the way, if you're afraid of bulking up by lifting heavy, you don't need to worry. First, to bulk up, you need to have a caloric surplus for it to be even theoretically possible. So you need to consume more calories than you burn, and that's usually not something that triathletes tend to do. And second, the type of weightlifting that actually causes bulking up and increased muscle size is lifting a large volume of moderate to lighter weights, whereas high reps, low weight training, that will get you stronger, a lot stronger, but you will do so without bulking up. It's the neuromuscular programming that it improves to make you stronger. All right, mistake number 5 is insufficient recovery between sets. So when you're lifting heavy, you're using energy that is stored in the cells immediately for immediate use. These stores are very limited. They last roughly 8 seconds for the very fastest of energy systems and about 20, maybe 30 seconds for the second fastest. And for these stores to replenish after using them, it takes 2 to 3 minutes to even restore them to maybe 60 to 70% of their original capacity. And if you want to make the most of your strength training, especially when doing low reps, high weight, you need to have these stores available or you won't be lifting to your capacity. Which leads us to that you actually need to recover for 2 to 3 minutes. Do nothing, maybe some light stretching, although I wouldn't recommend stretching the muscles that you are working in that current exercise, but maybe something else. If you're squatting, you might stretch your shoulders or something like that, but not your legs necessarily. That would be my recommendation. Anyway, the important thing here is that you need to recover for 2 to 3 minutes between sets. Don't try to cram in additional exercises in that time. Don't try to do arms after legs because you'll still be using energy. So just take it easy, meditate, do whatever you like, but take that recovery period. Mistake number 6 is poor post-workout and daily fueling and nutrition. When you lift weights, you are causing some serious muscle damage, and that's fine. It's all part of the plan, because then the idea is that through muscle protein synthesis, the muscles will repair and get stronger. But this is dependent on a few things. First, you need to have enough calories in general. If you are in a serious caloric deficit, then you're doing damage to your body, which it can't repair because it's working overtime, even just to prevent starvation and keep the vital functions going. Second, you need good post-workout fueling. This is really, really important. And this means having a snack with protein and carbs immediately after lifting, or at least within 30 minutes. You need the carbs to speed up the protein absorption rate and the muscle protein synthesis. So the amounts that you would be looking for is 20 to 30 grams of protein. If you are more muscular, you're a male, or you're a more muscular female, then go for 30 perhaps, especially if you've been lifting, having a bigger lifting session. And then 20 to 50 grams of carbs, so roughly a 1-to-1 to 1-to-2 ratio of protein to carbs. And while most of the day, of course, you know that I'm big on focusing on eating real unprocessed food, post-workout is a great time to have that recovery shake, because they are engineered with the types and ratios of carbs and proteins that will maximize your absorption rate and the muscle protein synthesis. Another thing, a final consideration, is protein throughout the day and spreading out your protein intake. This is something that a lot of athletes get wrong. Almost all of their protein come at dinner, which you can only absorb like 20 to 30 grams in one go anyway. So this is a total waste. You should have usually less protein, but more times per day. So 20 to 30 grams with each and every meal, plus that post-workout snack, potentially another snack if you're training a lot and you burn a lot of calories just through your resting metabolic rate, etc. So spreading out that protein intake, having a couple of eggs for breakfast, some good quality lean protein for lunch and dinner, and that post-workout snack. That's a great place to start. And mistake number 7 is not tracking progress. You've heard me say before that what you're not measuring, you're not managing. So just like you need to measure progress in your swim, bike, and run training, you should do so in strength training. Because if you're not improving, you need to take a step back and analyze why you're not improving and try to change something in your plan or in and around your training. Perhaps it might be a problem with your recovery or your nutrition. So this is really simple. Just keep a log in Training Peaks if you're using that, or in with notes and paper, pen and paper, note keeping with pen and paper, I should say. But the important thing is that you're tracking your progress. So just to reiterate one more time, because this is so important, you should expect to see improvements in your strength when you're going to the gym. It's not a question of just going there, doing some lifting, and not caring for what improvements you are seeing or not seeing. You should be seeing them. And tracking the progress is the only way that you can verify that this is happening. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this and found it useful. Be sure to check out the blog post and the podcast episode mentioned in and that I'll link to in the description. Also, I have a page with all the strength and conditioning related episodes and blog posts that I also link to in the episode description, and you can find it under popular topics on scientifictriathlon.com. There's in the menu bar, there's a popular topics item, and then there's a drop-down menu, and you can choose strength training from that. While you're on scientifictriathlon.com, if you're interested in training plans, coaching, or consulting, you can find all the details of these services and products right then and there. Big thanks to our sponsors, Roka, that make the best triathlon apparel in the world, from wetsuits, tri-suits, buoyancy shorts, swimskins, to sunglasses that I talked about at the front of this episode. Go to roka.com and check out their products, and use the promo code ThatTriathlonShow, all one word, all caps, for 20% off your entire order. And thanks to Precision Hydration, that you can find on precisionhydration.com. Take their free online sweat test to get an individualized hydration plans for your individual sweat rate and sweat sodium content. And then use the promo code ThatTriathlonShow, all one word, all caps, to get your first box for free. Thank you, as always, for listening. Keep training smart and keep loving triathlon.